This I did a video on, and I've got to say, like, I don't think it's true in any way, shape, or form. The only way I think that this is true is a soft reboot with a perspective that season 2, basically they're saying, Nerdrotic said that there's going to be a complete reboot from season 2, which
yeah, we've been hearing that kind of a thing, yeah.
But it's not going to be a complete reboot. It won't. There won't be, because it's too much of an admission. Now, a soft reboot, I would agree that there's the potential for that. Them going, yeah, season 2, we'll do a time jump, and we'll just we'll address some of the story threads, but we'll
kind of like
we'll sort of breeze over some.
Kind of like how every season in Star Trek Discovery was kind of a reboot of sorts.
Yeah, but it's not like so what have you heard then? Sorry, you said you've been hearing this. What have you heard?
The same kind of thing is that they're going to be kind of... What'll happen is that it'll probably be, like you said, more of a soft reboot of sorts. Because they still have to address, and they still have the cast and certain other aspects. But they may find a way to move away from a lot of the more controversial aspects. I guarantee you they're going to have to address Galadriel's character in some way to try and make her more likable. I doubt we'll see any major recasts or anything like that. Behind the scenes, we'll probably see a little movement. They'll be like, they're bringing in you'll see some weird announcement in like 6 months from now, like two new voices in the Lord of the Rings writers room, and helping McKay and Payne oversee Lord of the Rings are to bring in a fresh perspective for season 2. See, and that's the way they'll word, and what that means then is that those new people they bring in are the ones who are actually doing all the work, while McKay and Payne are basically given walking papers, but they're on paid leave, basically.
Yeah.
They're not really doing anything. Their power has been diminished. And this is kind of what we try to say when a lot of people misinterpret stuff, when we go, there's so-and-so's power has been diminished, like Kathleen Kennedy or whoever. And then they'll interpret that as gone. It's like, yeah, maybe for all intents and purposes they're gone from the main deal, but like in this case though, like I see it being one of those kind of situations where, yeah, they're still around, but how much power will they really actually have over the show? Because these guys, this was a gamble for Amazon all around, all across the board, and they made every mistake they could, unfortunately, and so it's hard to feel bad for them. And I brought this up this morning because in my interview with Robert Shea, I don't know if you ever got a chance to catch our interview with him. He talks a little bit about. We talked to him like 2 years ago. Yeah. And because we had asked him about Lord of the Rings, and he's like the big, and this misconception still rings to this day. I seen it in a recent article at either Deadline or Hollywood Reporter, and I'm just like, if they just listen to our interview, they'd know that's bullshit. But at the time, because they tried to compare this with that, and I'm like, this article is utter bullshit, because in no way are they comparable. Robert Shea pre-sold the Lord of the Rings trilogy overseas. And he pre-sold a bunch of the video rights too. So basically what he told us is it was all paid for. Even though everybody in the company was like, you're going to bankrupt the company. This is insane. You can't spend this amount of money on a trilogy. And you don't even know if the first movie's going to make any money. He's like, we'll be fine. He's like, he said, worst case scenario, even if, let's say the first movie had flopped, I could have still sold the rights to television and sold the videos, and they'd have been fine because I had already pre-sold everything. Across the board, we were already in the black. So that was the thing, is they were prepaid for it. And this is how Robert Shea basically ran New Line Cinema for 30, almost 40 years or whatever it was. It was how he ran the business. He was one of those few guys who actually took that model, because the Golden Globus guys used to do the same thing, the Canon guys and stuff like that. They would do the same kind of thing, but they would get too deep under their weight. Robert wouldn't take so much on. He'd only take on a couple projects at a time, make sure they were taken care of, make sure they made a profit, then move on to the next thing. He wouldn't try to do 30 things at once like those guys would. And that's where by the time he got to Lord of the Rings, it was old hat to him, right? He'd already been there and done this rodeo with Nightmare on Elm Street, Mortal Kombat, and a few other franchises, The Mask and, Blade and a few others, to where he kind of had an idea of how to sell this thing already. And he was the guy when Peter Jackson talked to him because they needed some more money. And at that time, Miramax was only going to let him do 2 movies. And Robert, the first thing he said is, he goes, well, it's 3 books. And Peter's like, yeah, I know. And he started in with his excuses. He's like, no. He's like, it's 3 books. It should be 3 movies. He's like, this is bullshit. He's like, he told us, if there was 5 books, I would have made 5 movies. He's like, it's Lord of the fucking Rings. I was just wanting to get in on this shit. And I could tell a little bit of it was a bit of a fuck you to Harvey Weinstein, because him and those two never got along from what it sounded like either. So like, yeah, because he kind of stole Lord of the Rings from Miramax in the end is what happened. But yeah, so the long story short is that is nothing like what happened with Amazon. Amazon has made the wrong moves from the start. They put way too much money on the line for something that was never in a million years. And we all knew it. Everybody knew it. You could even ask probably some Joe Schmo on the street. Do you think it's a good idea to spend $1 billion on a Lord of the Rings TV show where you technically don't even have the rights to any of the original stories or characters that really matter?
They did that.
Anybody would have told you, no, that's fucking stupid. That's like trying to open McDonald's and having nothing but pizzas to sell. You know, it's like, that's not what people come to McDonald's for. I mean, yeah, you may sell a few pizzas, but not a lot of people are going to leave your store happy.
Yeah, so bizarre. So the statement is that no, it's good. It's good. But this, I don't buy this. So Gary heard that they're going to go for and I quote, full-on reboot with this series and try to pretend that the last 2 months didn't happen. They're not going to do that. They can't. They won't admit defeat. They won't admit failure like that. I cannot see them doing that. If they've gone to such lengths to hide any negativity, any negative reviews, anything nasty, anything bad, right? Sink their reputation on hiding, reviews and things like that. Can you honestly, see that they would just go, you know what, actually, my bad. Sorry, we made something bad. We'll just reboot it. They're not going to do that. Like, at all. There's just no way. No. I mean, again, Tom, you might think otherwise.
Like I said, they'll revamp it. But as far as a reboot, flat out reboot, and them actually going, yeah, we fucked up this first season. Because like I said, Discovery, I think, is our main kind of, what they will do is they will say, we're getting more back to the roots, or we're getting closer to the things that the fans know, or certain things like that, or things that we saw in the first season will pay off now, and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of whatever excuse they can come up with, really, in the end. So. Yeah. No, it's a failure, and everybody knows it. It's kind of becoming another open secret in Hollywood, or in the circles that they fucked this up. This was a big dumb decision.
Well, I think just getting those Lord of the Rings influencers, the ones which didn't even like Lord of the Rings properly, on board. Like, what was that about? What an absolute joke.
Well, that just shows you how limited they have as far as their ability to understand not only the fan base, but just the general audience. This is not the general audience.
No.
And especially when they're trying to recapture or capture all these nerd fandoms heydays of popularity, and then inadvertently just inject them with all these politics, and then they make us out to be the problem when the shit don't work. And well, it's like, no, you came into our house, right? Like,
The funniest part about it all is most people's complaint, nigh on 99% of people's complaint was just that it was boring, it was dull, it had bad writing. Barely anyone was like, it's because there's a black elf in it. There's a black dwarf,
No, on the contrary. In fact, most people liked what's her face, Queen Dorito.
Lisa.
Yeah, like most people, that was one of their favorite characters, or at least that couple was. I mean, so that right there shows that. And that's the same thing with like She-Hulk. Look at what they expected us to bitch about just through the own show itself that they put in there, compared to what other people actually had a problem with. Most people are like, no, we like the idea, it's just you executed it poorly. The show should be this, Harvey Birdman meets, Night Court or whatever, and a little bit of Ally McBeal in there, whatever you want to call it. Maybe some Sex in the City if you really want to go to that extent. But no, instead it's just something that nobody was having fun with. Women weren't relating to it. Men weren't relating to it. The only people I had ever talked to that actually seemed to enjoy it were people that were such non-nerds when it comes to this stuff. Right? Like they had no clue. Because I had talked to somebody who just adored She-Hulk, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Most people didn't, though, and they asked why. And I said, because She-Hulk is actually a pretty popular character, contrary to what the series wants to make you believe. And not only that, they made her pretty much and the characters around her and her story arc the absolute opposite of what she is in the comics, and not in a clever way. So it really it grinds the gears of most fans instead of actually, going, aha, that was kind of clever, or I like this, instead they're getting the opposite of what they want.
You have anything to add to that, Paulie, my dude? I know you're back now.
No, I just, as far as Rings of Power, I won't call it the Lord of the Rings. It's historically, it's Hollywood's biggest disaster. It's just on every level that you can think of, monetary, creatively, fandom wise. It is. There's nothing else. There's no Ishtar, Heaven's Gate. I mean, they were disasters as far as like money put in return, but there was no fandom behind those movies. This is historic. So I mean, I hope for more of a rehaul would be great.
Yeah.